right. Well, we are thrilled to be kind of wrapping up our TED Talks today with Thriving in the Digital Age. Picture this. A pharmacy student sits down to study pharmacokinetics, a complex subject that requires deep focus and sustained attention. She pulls out her lecture slides, grabs a highlighter, and then her phone buzzes. Just a quick check. 3 minutes later, she's watching a TikTok of someone's morning routine. Another notification. Now she's responding to a group chat about weekend plans. 20 minutes have passed and she hasn't highlighted a single line. Sound familiar? This isn't a story about poor self-control or laziness. This is the reality of trying to learn and thrive in a digital age. As educators, we see these same struggles play out in our classrooms every day. We witness the sea of laptop screens displaying everything but our lecture slides, students scrolling through social media while we try to explain complex topics, and the growing disconnect between our carefully prepared lesson plans and their fragmented attention spans. We're trying to train future healthcare professionals who will require deep focus and attention to detail to make life or death decisions, and yet we're struggling to maintain their attention for a single lecture period. This problem extends beyond academic performance. We're witnessing unprecedented levels of depression, anxiety, and social isolation amongst our students. And while we've attempted to treat those symptoms, we've largely ignored one of the root causes sitting right in their pockets. So what have we tried to do about this in the College of Pharmacy? Last year, when we were working to redesign our professional development seminar courses specifically focused on wellness, we decided to include something about digital wellness and dedicated one of the required workshops specifically towards this topic. But we faced several challenges. How do you make meaningful behavior change with just 2 hours? How do you compete with the very devices specifically engineered to capture attention? And how do you help students realize the potential impact of their digital habits? Our pharmacy students come from diverse backgrounds, from 22-year-olds who grew up with smartphones to older students returning to school and still adapting to online learning platforms. Some have already developed some self-regulation habits, while others are just beginning to explore the impact of their phone habits on their well-being and academic performance. We needed an approach that would resonate with all of them and provide practical tools that they could implement immediately. That's where the Center for Campus Wellness came in.
So the average, based on several studies, the average American adult spends between 4 and 5 hours per day on their phones. And by comparison, the average college student spends between 8 and 10 hours per day on their phones. And many people report that they don't want to spend this much time online, but they've really struggled to figure out how to change those patterns. And this is not a personal failing, this is by design. So for me, I don't play games on my phone. I very rarely use social media. So I didn't really think I needed to worry about my smartphone usage. But over the last couple of years, I've started to notice an increasing amount of overwhelm around communication and notifications. I feel like I need to be responsive and available all the time, both in my personal life and also at work, because work is also on my phone, and I'm sure that's the same for you all. And so we're not alone in this. I started kind of digging into a lot of reading and research to try to figure out some things I could just learn for myself. I started learning more things about time management and about focus, but this is also a topic that comes up a lot for students, and when we talk about stress and things like that, this is a topic that commonly comes up. So a little before Elizabeth and I started working together on the redesign for the seminar course, I read the book The Anxious Generation, and this is How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. It's by social psychologist Jonathan Haidt. And this is a diagram that he references in the book. And the hypothesis that he makes in the book is really interesting, because essentially it takes all these like little things that we're we're thinking we need to address and we need to change, and really zooms out to a much bigger problem that we're having. So his hypothesis is that there was no other large cultural or societal event that happened in the developed world at the same time, around 2010, that would explain such a high rise in things like anxiety and depression, other than the introduction of smartphones, and some of the changes that happened with those. So like the apps that were developed to be used on those phones as well. We can see also that this is not unique only to college students. This is something that we see across most age groups of people who are interacting with that technology. So when we met and started talking about how we wanted to structure this seminar course, we talked about some of this research, and it really resonated with both of us, and we decided that we wanted to incorporate some things about digital wellness into the course. This is a opportunity for my team to pilot something new, which is exciting for us, but there's also a lot of things that we learn in that process that either work well or don't work well. So we gathered a lot of information. I have a team of 4 people that I supervise, and we all got together, we read a lot, we did a lot of research, and tried to distill that information down into a 2-hour workshop with some actionable tools that we can share with students. As health educators, we try to use a series of best practices and models, and also feedback from students, and then our own observations to try to really hone in on what's going to be the best approach. Adult learning theory is one that we reference a lot, and it tells us that we need to prioritize relevance. The topic needs to feel relevant to the audience. They need to have a sense of choice. We need to value their own experience, and we also need to give them opportunities to practice and apply what they've learned. So the format that we ended up landing on for this is similar to what I described some of our other workshops from this morning. We started out with an introduction where we shared some of the research, and we introduced that zoom out to them. And then we broke up into smaller groups, and we had some discussion tables that students rotated through. So each of the groups were based on one of the 4 harms that were identified in that book, The Anxious Generation. So one is social isolation, sleep deprivation, attention fragmentation, and then addiction. And so students were able to get together as a group, have a facilitated discussion. Part of that involved them sharing about how this has shown up in their own lives and what sorts of strategies and tools they've tried. And then we shared some things that we had gathered from some of our research. So I wanted to share just some of the key tools that we shared in each of these. So for social isolation, we talked with students about the paradox of feeling alone, but feeling connected but alone, that comes from interacting with people online. And then we shared some research with them around how to make friends as an adult. So some things that came up were assuming that people like you, because research shows that most people assume people don't like them, and then are afraid to make the effort. Giving compliments, people like people who like them. And then joining in regular unplanned interactions with shared vulnerability with others. Around sleep hygiene, we shared some science around blue light that comes from our devices and how that impacts our melatonin production, and we shared some sleep hygiene tips. Around attention fragmentation, we shared the concept of attention residue. That is that it takes about 23 minutes for us to regain our focus after we've been interrupted or had a distraction. And then we shared some tools like grayscale mode. Also, there's an app called the Forest app and the Pomodoro study technique. Those are all things that can help us to protect our focus. And then around addiction, we shared some tools. We talked about how smartphones really hack our dopamine systems. So knowing that and understanding that, we can think about how we want to respond to that. So one option is detoxing with friends. Another is adding meaningful activities into our free time. And then another, we shared some sensory kits with students to help them to be able to tap into their body in the present moment and practice mindfulness. So since this was our pilot of the workshop, we wanted to get some feedback from students. A couple things we heard was that centering the book, The Anxious Generation, gave people the feeling that because it's focused on childhood, that the research that we were sharing didn't apply to older adults. And so we know that we need to make sure and highlight some of the other research that we found as well. Students did report that they liked some of the tools that helped them to apply some of the things that we were talking about. So, for example, we brought digital timers for them to study without having their phones in the room with them. And I mentioned the sensory kits that we put together. I personally felt that some of the stations were harder than others to break into useful steps. So for example, sleep hygiene is a very personal thing. It's hard to really talk about in a meaningful way in a workshop. And also around social isolation, the research around making friends is very interesting, but it wasn't necessarily connected to smartphones and the impact that they have on our social lives. So I wanted to share some changes that we want to make for the next iteration of this workshop, which is happening in November. We want to incorporate some new research that we found around things like with social isolation. One of the key reasons that devices are a problem for this is because people are not having as many real-time conversations. So whether that's in person or on the phone, having unscripted real-time conversations gives us opportunity. I know some of the other people have talked about this as an important life skill, right? But it gives us an opportunity to feel seen and to really deal with the loneliness that we feel when we reach for our phones. And it also helps us to build empathy. So being able to make mistakes in a conversation, recover from them, or do that for another person is a really important skill for students to learn. The other thing that we want to incorporate into the workshop going forward is the importance of solitude. I'm not quite sure exactly where this fits. I feel like it kind of fits with attention. But there's some research that talks about how the impact of, essentially we need solitude because it allows us to process social interactions that we've had and understand them. It allows us to develop our sense of self, and it also allows us to problem solve. And more now we're filling all of our time where we're not around other people, or even when we're around other people, on our phones. And so really what solitude is, it's not necessarily being alone, it's being not having input from other people in our minds. So that's something we want to add to this. I'm getting the feeling that I'm going over time. Our takeaways for this are we really feel like digital wellness is a root cause of so many problems that people are experiencing. And so we think it's important to bring that into your curriculum in whatever way you can. We really want to encourage collaboration, and we want to help you bring engaging opportunities to your students to help them address this problem. Thank you very much.